Welcome everyone to our iServe webinar for today. It's a live demonstration, how to build a custom self-service application in Employee Central. My name is AJ Whalen. I'm with iServe, and I'll be joined in a moment by Luke Marson, also from iServe, and he will be the one taking us through our presentation and our demonstration for today. I'm going to start off with a quick review of the agenda. We'll do a brief introduction of our speaker, and then I will turn it over to him. He will walk you through the topic for today, kind of the justification and why we're covering it, and then he will do a live demonstration and show you the content that we're here for today, and we'll wrap it up with questions and answers at the end of the session. Speaking of questions, the way we do questions in our iServe webinars is by using the questions feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. That's that box on the side of your screen. You may have minimized that box to watch the presentation, but there's a questions section there. It allows you to type in your questions at any time during the presentation. So go ahead and do that if you have questions throughout the presentation, and when we get to the question and answer portion at the end of the presentation, we will read them in the order they were received. If there are any questions we cannot get to for time or other reasons during the presentation, we will make sure we follow up individually with those who asked them during the presentation. So from an introduction perspective, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Luke Marson is a member of the executive management team. He's also a founder and CEO of iServe Americas. He has more than 50 HCM projects under his belt across multiple continents, EMEA, North America, and Asia Pacific, including more than 20 specific projects on SAP SuccessFactors. He's written multiple books and many, many articles and blog posts on SAP SuccessFactors and SAP HCM. He is an alumnus of the SAP Mentor Program and also part of the SAP SuccessFactors Analyst and Influencer Program. He's a frequent speaker at SAP and SuccessFactors conferences worldwide. I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, Luke Marson. Luke?
Thank you very much, AJ. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone that's joined today. I hope this is going to be an informative demonstration for you. I hope it's not going to be too long, but we should be able to get through everything in a short period. Before we get started, I just wanted to go through one or two slides to cover the scenario that we're going to cover today. So I intend to build out an employee and manager self-service process in the system using the metadata framework. This will soon be replaced by the Extension Center, and I hope that we will be able to recreate this webinar in the Extension Center in the next 1 or 2 months. So for this grievance self-service process, what we're going to look at is building a process in which the employee can go in and they can fill out the grievance that they have. And then that grievance will flow through via workflow to their manager and notificating the HR, or if the grievance is about their manager, then the grievance will flow through to the manager of their manager. We're going to have a couple of fields that have drop-down lists, so I'm going to show configuring those. Some fields that are date-related fields. And what we're going to do first is build the actual underlying objects and the pick list and the user interface. I'm going to put that into the system, permission it, and then show you what that looks like, show you how an employee would go in and access that. Then what I would like to do afterwards is then create a workflow, assign that workflow, and assign a business rule that sets the value of one of the fields on that object by default. Just to give you an example of how easy it is to build business rules and how to apply them. And then we can see that process as well, and see what that looks like. So I won't keep you waiting. I think we can jump right into the system. So I'm just logging into the system. So I'm going to be logged in as an administrator. So that means I'm going to have access to all the different administration capabilities in the system. Now, for some of you that are already live with Employee Central, some of the screens may look a little different. I have the new Next Gen Admin Center enabled in my demo system, and I also have the people profile. However, the principles behind what we're doing are going to be the same whether you're using the what's called the V12, the interface, or whether you're using the people profile interface in Employee Central. So what I need to do first is I need to configure the pick list that I'm going to use in my object. And that's actually done in the same place in which the object is configured. So these are in menu options available under Employee Files, but I've actually got them saved under my saved favorites here. So I'm going to go into Configure Object Definitions. This is a metadata framework application, which is available by standard in the system for all Employee Central customers. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to the Create menu, and I'm going to select Pick List. So the pick list is a drop-down list that enable you to select predefined list of values. If you're an SAP customer, you will know that as an F4 help. And these are available all over the system. Now, before I do this, I'm going to create two pick lists. Now, for my grievance object, I need to have a field that displays the type of grievance for the employee to select from, and then the status, so that the employee and the manager and all those dealing with it as it goes through the process are able to update the status. So I'm going to call my application My Grievance, and I'm going to first of all create the grievance type pick list. So you can see it's very easy to get this going. I'm giving it a code, I'm giving it a name, I'm going to select a sort order alphabetical, and then I'm going to select an effective start date for my pick list. Now, since I don't want this to influence anything negatively in the system, I'm going to give it a start date of 1st of January 1900. The start date is useful because you may want to effectively date changes to pick lists at a future date. So, for example, you want to change your process on January the 1st, 2017. You don't need to wait until that day to do it. You can do that, maybe 2 months before. So now I've defined the basic aspects of my pick list. I'm going to define some values. So every value needs to have a unique code, the external code, and it needs to have a label. So I'm going to first put in just a few values of the type of grievance that can be reported. So we're going to start with violent conduct, assault, verbal abuse, sexual misconduct, and harassment. None of these very pleasant things. And I'm just going to give them all a simple, unique identifier. And that's it. I mean, that is my pick list defined. You do see some other fields that haven't used, like a parent pick list. This enables you to have pick lists that have a parent so that you can have unique values in your pick list depending on the values selected in the parent pick list. Like you might have country-specific values, for example. But we don't need to use that here. I'm just going to carry on. So now you can see that my pick list is being created. And you can see I have the ability here to edit or delete pick list records. And I can also insert new effective dated records. So what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to go and create my second pick list. For the status. So we just have a few values for this. View, open, in progress. I'll just give them a code. I'll display order none. Just leave it as it is. There we go. And that's it for the pick list. Very simple process there. And you can also access all pick lists by selecting pick list here and then selecting it from the list. But what we're going to do now is we're going to create the actual object definition. What the object definition does is going to define the behavior of the process we're creating and all of the fields available within that process. This is really the underlying data store for our process. So we're going to give it a code, and because that's a custom code, it's a custom object, sorry, it's going to have CUST_ prefix. And then we've got some basic attributes we can set up, like effective dating. You may want your data to just have a single date, or you may want there to be maybe you can make many changes, or many changes in a single day. And for child objects, we won't get into that today, you can inherit the effective dating from the parent object. But we're going to select multiple changes per day here, because because there may be cases where this process has to be updated more than once within a single day. So I'm just going to select yes here, because it's just going to add in some specific fields. I can set up whether this is visible to the system APIs, so that I can integrate my object with other systems. So I'm going to put read only, because I may want to have this object readable by those APIs. Oops. Also, whether I want history, which I do, I need to give my object a name. Just going to call it my grievance. And then there are some other fields. You can set a single workflow, but we're going to actually use a business rule for conditional workflow, since that's maybe a more interesting concept to see. So pending data just defines whether when there's a workflow, whether the data is pending the workflow approval what's visible, or whether it's visible immediately. I want it to be visible immediately, so we'll select no. And then there's the to-do category. So which category does the workflow go when it's on in the to-do list? I'll put an employee change request. Now we can add our fields. So I'm just going to add 6 or 7 fields related to the particular process. But first, because this is a self-service process, I'm going to change this data type here to user for the code of the object. And I'm going to leave the other default fields the same. But now I'm going to add some fields. So this is quite straightforward. I can just go in here and just put type for my field type. And remember, we created a pick list for that, so I'm going to set that as a pick list. But there's some more information I need to add, so I need to go into here and I need to add the name of the pick list. Now in the new extension center, you don't have to type this in. You can select it from a drop-down list, and we'll run through that the next time we do a demo. And then I want to give the field a name. Just want to call it type of grievance. And that's it. And select done. I'm now going to add in the status. And again, that was the other one we created a pick list for. So again, I'm going to have to come in and give it, type in the name. That's the pick list. Then the name of the field. Now there's a couple of other fields that we're going to need to have here. So because the grievance is related to an individual, we're going to have a field for who the subject is of the grievance, and that's going to be a data type user. That means that it's going to be a list of employees there that the user can select from. Again, need to give the field a label. Again, in the extension center, actually adding a label is much easier. You don't have to go to the details page in the extension center. So, we're going to field for the incident date, and we select date. So you see how easy it is to define the different types of fields. All you have to do is just select the type from a drop-down box. So again, for description, we're going to select CLOB. So that basically means it's a very long field in the database, and so that you can type in up to 4,000 characters, which is much more suitable for something like a description as opposed to a normal name. We'll have response date. Again, it's a date field. So let's go down and quickly give these labels. The date of the incident. Incident description. And date of response. Get my typing a little bit better. And that's all the fields added. As easy as that. Oh, one change is I need to give my the date of the grievance report. Excellent. Now there's a few other fields here, maybe some that are not so useful all the time. Searchable fields is just for when you want to access different fields. So when a HR administrator is looking through records, they can search by the value of a field. So I'm going to put in external code. As a field, I'm going to add the subject. And the status. And then the security. So we want to secure this to different users. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm actually going to leave the object unsecured. So typically you would secure it, and then you would go to the different permission roles that you want to access, who you want to access this, and then enable it. But we want a lot of people to access it, so for now I'm going to leave that just for the purposes of the demo. And then we have all different rules. Now we don't have any rules to add right now, but we'll come back and look at that in a little while. So I'm going to save my object definition. Okay, so that's it. My object's being created. We've got the piglets assigned. So now we can go and create the user interface. So for that, we're going to use the Manage Configuration UI transaction. Now this is very quick and simple to use. I'll click Create New. So I'm going to give my user interface an ID, and then I'm going to select the object. Now there's a lot on the list, so I'm just going to start typing, and there's my object. And what's happened is that it's actually built the user interface dynamically. So here are all the fields that are part of our object. Now, transaction sequence is a technical field, so I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to make it not visible. Same with the external name. We don't need that. It's very easy to hide fields. Now, I can do other things like change the layout. If I go to Edit Properties, I could maybe change it to grid. Have all the fields across. I think I actually prefer the original layout, so I'm going to change it back to the form. And there's other things you can add fields specifically for the user interface, so they won't be saved, but they'll be available to maybe input data, or sometimes to use to display data. And you can also add specific rules only for your user interface, so that maybe if the object is accessed elsewhere, maybe by a HR administrator, they wouldn't trigger for those users. So it's all very simple to set these up. I'm just going to select Save. And that's it. Nice and easy. Nice and easy. So now go to the interface. We've now got to put it into the screen where it's going to be accessed. So I'll go back to the Admin Center again. And then I'm going to use the Manage People profile. Usually this would be the configure employee files if you were using the old interface, but I have a people profile enabled. So configure people profile. Now this is going to bring up all the sections of the personal information screen, the employment information screen, and all of the other sections that are available within Employee Central, as well as the platform screens, like public profile, for example. So I'm going to put this within the employment information screen. So I'm going to scroll down the bottom here and set live profile and drag this over here. So this is enabling me to add in a user interface block. So I can click on here and I've got a list of all of the screens that are being created, the configuration UIs, and we can see mine here. So I can select that. And then I can give a name to this section. Click Save. And voila, that's saved. So normally, the process that I've skipped out that you would normally take now is to go and permission the object to each of the permission roles that you have. But just for purposes of time, I'm going to skip that section for now. What I'm going to do now is, as an employee, I'm going to go to my employee file and I'm going to look at this. So now we can see what it actually looks like. So maybe for some of you that aren't familiar with the people profile, this is what it looks like. If you've got Employee Central, you'll already be familiar with the personal information and the employment information screens. They're located here now with the profile and the scorecard and any other screens you have in kind of one long page. So I'm going to click employment information. You can see all the portlets as you'll be used to. You've seen Employee Central, job information. I can hover over my manager there, organizational information, job relationships and whatnot, compensation. If we scroll down, we can then see the My Grievance tab. So if I'm an employee and I wanted to raise a grievance, I could just click on the Edit button and I can get the form up. So we have the effective date here that I'm raising this, and then we can see, if I click the drop down, here we can see the values that we configured earlier in alphabetical order. We then got the status field with the values in as we said earlier. We can put subjects of the grievance in here. I can just start typing and it will give me the list of values and so forth. I can enter the incidents. We have the description box here and then the date of response. Since we have the calendar here and I can click on the value. But the process isn't complete. There's no workflow here. There's nothing that's going to notify anybody, and we'd like the status field to be defaulted when we come into new, because that makes sense. So I'm going to cancel this, and what we'll do now is we'll go and create those workflows. So we'll go back up the screen to the main menu, and we'll go to Admin Center. So I'm going to create those two workflows I mentioned earlier. So one is going to send a workflow to the manager, and one's going to send one to the manager's manager. And that's going to depend on the rule that we will configure afterwards. So we're going to manage organization pay and job structures. Now, for those of you that have Employee Central now, you may be familiar with managing and creating workflows. It's a very simple process. So like with any objects that we create, any object records, I've got to give it a name and an ID. So I'm just going to give it the same name and ID. I'll put a reminder on for 7 days for that to remind the user to answer. So this is really simple. I'm going to go to set the approver type of role, and then I'm going to select manager. It's quite easy. I'm going to select no edit under edit transaction because I don't want the manager to be able to edit it. And then I'm going to select the CC role here. So we'll select the role as the HR of the employee, the HR manager. That means they get notified about this. So let's hit save. And that's it. We've created the first workflow. Let's create the second workflow. So we'll just give it a very slightly different name, just so we can distinguish it. We'll give it the same attributes as before. We'll go to the role, and then we'll select Manager. And we'll go down to the CC, that's Employee HR. So really simple. So we've just created two workflows there, but now we need to create the trigger rules. So we'll go back to the Admin Center. I've got it in my favorites, luckily, Configure Business Rules. So I'll hit the Create New Rule button to create a business rule. And this is a really great part of the system, is creating business rules is so easy. So I'll give my rule a name. It gives it the ID automatically base name, and then we've got to select the object for which we want the workflow, and that is, of course, the My Grievance object that we created earlier in the object definition screen. So I'll just start typing, and it will show up. We'll hit Continue. So here's the rule. So now, as we mentioned, we want this to be a conditional workflow. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a quick rule that says if the subject of the grievance is the employee's manager, then raise the workflow that goes to the manager's manager, else raise the workflow that goes to the manager. Fairly straightforward. So we click on here and we can see the field and all the different fields. So we can see the object and all the different fields on the object. So I'm going to set subject of the grievance, because that's the field that contains the that will contain the person that is the subject of the grievance we're creating. And then we're going to select, so external code represents the user, the person that's actually creating this grievance. So we're going to expand that, and we see all the different portlets of data here, and I can expand job information, and I'm going to scroll down and select supervisor. So this is the supervisor of the person creating the grievance. Quite simple. So then we're going to set what happens when that condition is met. So we're going to put set wfconfig, the workflow configuration, to be the workflow. I'll start typing just to get that to show. So far, if the person is the subject of the grievance is the supervisor of the employee, then set the workflow to be the manager. And but what we'll do is we're going to add an else, so that if that condition isn't met, it's going to set the workflow to go to the manager. So basically, if the grievance is about anyone else except the manager himself, it's going to flow through to him. So you can see how easy it is to build business rules. You can build much more complex and much more simple ones, and we'll look at a simple one, but you can see how easy this is. Okay, so we'll now create the rule that's going to default the value of the status field. So again, give it a name. We'll just call it default for now. Now, for this rule, because it's going to be a default rule whenever somebody raises a grievance, I'm going to select always true. That means there are no conditions. It just assumes that it will always trigger the then. So we're going to select the status field, it's equal to, and then here we can see our pick list values. We'll select new and click save. And it's as simple as that. So now let's go and assign these to our object. So we're going to assign the rule that sets default values, and then we're going to assign the rule that creates the workflow. So we're going to go back to object definition to do this. So this time we're going to select object definition from here, and we'll search for our object. Now again, a lot of this is going to be a lot easier in the Extension Center. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll do another webinar with the Extension Center, and you can see the difference between the two processes. So what we'll do first, is select Take Action so that we can edit, and we can go to the bottom to the rules. So here we can select the drop down and we just search for the rule I created. There we go, My Grievance default. And then for the workflow, that's considered a save rule because it triggers when the object is saved. I'll select workflow. So we have different trigger points here, and they do different things. All this is documented in publicly available metadata framework documentation available from SAP on SAP Service Marketplace and help.sap.com. So I'm now going to click Save, and now those rules have been applied. Okay, we can see them there. Right, so I guess the next thing to do is to test this out. So I'm going to go to my employee file, and we're going to go back and see whether this works, or whether the demo daemons have got into my system. So again, we'll just go down to the employment information and scroll down to My Grievance. So we can see here the status field has been defaulted. Let's now select the grievance. We'll enter the subject of the grievance. We'll select the date. It's last month. Oops. Peter wasn't nice to me. And we'll leave a data response, and we'll click Save. Now we can see the workflows popped up. We'll show participants, and this is the manager of Anya. So we can see that it selected the manager because the subject of the grievance is not the manager. But if we were to say, put him in here, sorry, I forgot his name already. Charles Brown, and we select Save, we can see that Christine Dolans is coming because Christine is the manager of Charles. So we can click Confirm, and now that is going to route through. Okay, so really that's pretty much the end of the demo for now. So I think what we'll do is we will switch through to the Q&A.
Absolutely. While you're doing that, I'm going to remind everyone that the questions portion of the GoToWebinar control panel is where you can type in your questions. There's a few in there right now, so we're going to go to those. And while I'm getting that out of the queue, on the screen there, you'll notice that we do have an upcoming webinar next Thursday, what you need to know to move your global payroll to the cloud. Hope you'll join us for that. You can find the registration information at iserv.com/events. Luke, the first question in the queue says, is it possible for us to do this ourselves, or do we need a consultant?
Oh, absolutely. You can do this yourself. Customers have access to those tools. You just have to permission them in the system. And you most certainly can do all the things that I just did. There's no programming required or any of the steps. You can simply do that. And that's something your implementation partner can teach you how to do. I would recommend that you do restrict the access of those tools to only a certain group of people because they're very flexible and there's a lot of things that you can do. So I'd really recommend putting some governance around the process of maintaining those changes. But certainly, you can set up people within the organization to do that. So you don't necessarily need a partner.
Okay, perfect. Next question, does this work for manager self-service as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. You can permission it to employee self-service or manager self-service, and we could put in, when we created that configuration UI earlier, we could actually have created another one, which we then could have put into manager self-service. So we have some different options available, but certainly that is definitely possible.
Okay, next question says, I logged in late, apologies. Says, can I integrate these objects with other systems?
Certainly you can, yes. I don't know if you saw it at the start, but when we were configuring the object definition of the process, you'll see we can set the object visibility to the API and the SuccessFactors system to be read-only or editable. So you can expose those to be read by different systems. Either they can just read the data, or actually they could also update the data as well. And that applies to any objects you create. And certain objects provided by SAP are exposed as well, so that you can pretty much integrate anything between Employee Central and other systems.
Okay. I have no other questions in the queue at the moment, so if that is the case, I'm going to ask Luke to advance to the next slide, please. And we'll just touch on this for you. In case you're not familiar with iServe, you may be aware of Luke and his expertise in all of his writings. He's part of the team, again, as CEO of iServe Americas. But iServe as a whole, as an SAP SuccessFactors partner, we do end-to-end full suite SAP SuccessFactors consulting, and that is all the way from planning and evaluating to conversion, integration, and also health checks for existing customers and full support and maintenance for customers throughout the entire process. We hope that you will take advantage of that. Reach out to us at info@iserve.com. We would love to talk to you to find out where you're at, where your needs are, and how we can help you. And again, we have services that fit customers at every stage in their Employee Central and their SAP SuccessFactors process. I want to thank Luke Marson very much for his efforts today and for getting all of that done in half an hour as promised. A fantastic job, and thank all of you for taking time out of your work days. We hope you will join us at another webinar very soon. In the meantime, please do reach out to us for any of your SAP SuccessFactors needs. At this point, since there are no further questions, this will conclude our session for today.